The twinkling lights, the carols. Christmas is a time for joy, family, and murder. Murder?
Yes. Forget the sugar plum fairies. This Christmas, we're uncovering the horrifying truth behind real-life murders that shattered families and left communities in terror. These are the stories you won't hear from Santa.
But you need to know.
Our first story takes us back to 1929 in the quiet countryside of Germantown, North Carolina. The Lawson family was well respected in their small farming community. Charles Lawson, the head of the family, appeared to be a devoted husband and father to his wife Fanny and their 7 children. Charles Lawson was a tobacco farmer, and though times were tough, the family was surviving. On Christmas morning, Charles surprised his wife and children with a trip to town to buy new clothes and have a professional family portrait taken, a rare luxury for rural farmers at the time. This unusual act struck neighbors as odd, but was later seen as a chilling prelude to the day's events. But as the day wore on, darkness descended on the Lawson household. Around noon, Charles methodically began his horrifying plan. While 12-year-old Carrie and 7-year-old Mabel played outside, Charles approached them with a shotgun. He shot both girls and then bludgeoned them to ensure they were dead. Charles then returned to the house, where he shot his wife Fanny as she sat on the porch. Inside the home, the younger children, 4-year-old James, 2-year-old Raymond, and 4-month-old Mary Lou, were next. Charles killed them in cold blood, one by one. To conceal his actions, he placed their bodies neatly in the parlor and covered them with pillows and rocks. Charles's eldest son, 16-year-old Arthur, was the only survivor. That morning, Charles had sent Arthur into town to buy more ammunition, a move that many believe was intentional. When Arthur returned, he found the grisly aftermath. Charles's body was found in the woods near the house. Beside him lay 2 letters scribbled in a Bible, though their contents offered no clear explanation. Investigators later discovered he had paced back and forth in the woods for hours before turning the shotgun on himself.
It was a horror story. I mean, it was a national story. It made the front page of the New York Times, so it was more than just a local story.
In the aftermath, rumors swirled. Some speculated that Charles had suffered from a head injury months prior, which may have caused a mental break. Others pointed to financial stress during the Great Depression, but the most sinister theory came decades later, when a relative alleged that Charles had been sexually abusing his eldest daughter Marie, who was 17 at the time of her death. Marie had reportedly confided in a close friend about being pregnant, and some believe the child's father was Charles himself. While this claim has never been proven, it added a dark layer to an already horrifying story. Today, the Lawson family murders remain one of the most infamous crimes in North Carolina history. The family's home became a macabre tourist attraction, complete with souvenirs and guided tours. Though the house has since been demolished, the chilling story lives on.
Claude Lawson.
And whenever I went in there, some of them was laying there in the house dead. Blood running every way.
In 2008, the quiet city of Covina, California, witnessed a nightmare that would haunt its residents forever. A man, dressed as Santa Claus, brought death and destruction to a family gathering in what became one of the most horrifying mass murders in the state's history. Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, a 45-year-old man, seemed like an ordinary individual on the surface. Described by some as outgoing and friendly, Pardo's life took a dark turn following a contentious divorce from his wife, Sylvia Pardo. The marriage dissolved amid accusations of infidelity and financial disputes, leaving Bruce embittered. The divorce was finalized just a week before Christmas, stripping Bruce of not only his marriage but also significant financial assets. He was ordered to pay Sylvia $1,785 per month in spousal support and lost ownership of their dog, a blow that friends say deeply affected him. As the holiday season approached, Bruce began to plan his revenge. In the weeks leading up to Christmas Eve, Bruce meticulously prepared for his attack. He purchased a Santa suit, for semi-automatic handguns, and a homemade flamethrower. He also filled a package with gasoline to create a deadly incendiary device. The Ortega family, relatives of Sylvia Pardo, were hosting their annual Christmas Eve party. About 25 family members and friends gathered to celebrate the holiday, completely unaware of the horror about to unfold. At approximately 11:30 p.m., Bruce Pardo arrived at the Ortega home. Dressed as Santa Claus and holding a large gift-wrapped package, he knocked on the door. An 8-year-old girl answered, delighted to see Santa. What happened next was beyond comprehension. Without warning, Bruce pulled out 2 semi-automatic pistols and opened fire. He targeted everyone in sight, killing 9 people, including Sylvia and her parents. Survivors later recounted the sheer terror as they scrambled to escape through windows and doors. Among the victims were Joseph and Alicia Ortega, Sylvia's parents and 5 of her siblings. Some family members managed to survive by hiding under furniture or escaping through broken windows. As if the massacre wasn't horrifying enough, Pardo unwrapped his package, revealing the homemade flamethrower. He sprayed gasoline throughout the house.
He's shooting! He's shooting! What's your address? Ma'am, I understand. I need to know your address.
And ignited it, causing a massive inferno that engulfed the home. By the time firefighters arrived, the Ortega home was ablaze. It took hours to extinguish the fire.
My daughter's been shot. She was shot in the face on the side and she's bleeding.
I know. I let the officers know. The officers are making sure it's safe for the paramedics to
I
come
Oh,
need a
in.
bandage, please.
Which destroyed all evidence of the joyous gathering that had taken place earlier that evening. Bruce Pardo fled the scene, but his escape plan unraveled. He suffered third-degree burns when the flamethrower exploded, leaving him in severe pain. Hours later, police found Pardo dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in his brother's home. Inside Pardo's rental car, investigators discovered more weapons and supplies, suggesting he had intended to commit additional acts of violence. Fortunately, the car malfunctioned, preventing further bloodshed. The Covina Christmas Eve massacre left a lasting scar on the community. 9 lives were lost and countless others were forever changed. The incident served as a grim reminder of how unchecked rage and meticulous planning can lead to unimaginable tragedy. In the aftermath, the surviving Ortega family members focused on rebuilding their lives and honoring the memories of their loved ones. The story of Bruce Jeffrey Pardo stands as one of the darkest chapters in holiday history, where the joy of Christmas was shattered by a man consumed by vengeance. It was Christmas Eve, 1945, in the quiet town of Fayetteville, West Virginia. The Sauter family, a hard-working Italian-American household, was preparing for a joyous holiday. But by morning, their home was reduced to ashes. 5 of their children were missing, and what initially seemed like a tragic house fire quickly unraveled into one of the most baffling mysteries in American history. George and Jenny Sauter lived with their 10 children in a 2-story home. On that fateful night, George and Jenny, along with 4 of their children, escaped the flames. But 5 of the children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny Jr., and Betty, were never seen again. Their disappearance has puzzled investigators and amateur sleuths alike for nearly 80 years. At approximately 1 a.m., Jenny Sauter woke to the sound of something hitting the roof, followed by a rolling noise. Moments later, she smelled smoke and found the house ablaze. Despite George's frantic efforts to save his children, the fire consumed the home in less than 45 minutes. The 5 missing children were presumed dead. But here's where the story takes a strange turn. No remains of the children were ever found. Firefighters, delayed by a shortage of manpower and miscommunication, arrived hours after the fire had already burned itself out. When they sifted through the rubble, they found no bones, no teeth, no evidence to suggest the children had perished in the flames. Experts noted that even in intense fires, human remains, particularly bones, are almost always recovered. This glaring anomaly led the Sauters to question the official narrative. Could their children still be alive? Compounding the mystery were a series of strange occurrences leading up to the fire. George Sauter, who was outspoken against Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, had received threats from local individuals aligned with pro-fascist sentiments. Just weeks earlier, an insurance salesman warned George that his house would go up in smoke and that his children would be destroyed if he didn't stop criticizing Mussolini. On the night of the fire, the Sauters' phone line had been cut, and the family's ladder, which George intended to use to rescue his children, was found missing. Later discovered in a ditch far from the house. Additionally, their vehicles, which George tried to use to reach the second floor, mysteriously failed to start. In the aftermath, George and Jenny received cryptic clues suggesting the children were alive. A photograph of a young man resembling one of their sons was mailed to them in the 1960s with no return address. The back of the photo read, "Louis Sauter, I love brother Frankie. Illo boys, a 90132 or 35. The Sauters' relentless search for answers spanned decades. They put up billboards, hired private detectives, and even excavated the site of their burned home, uncovering strange fragments, but never any definitive evidence. For over 30 years, a billboard along Route 16 displayed the Sauters' plea for information. It read, what was their fate? Kidnapped? Murdered? The family firmly believed the fire was a cover-up for an abduction, possibly tied to George's political enemies or a broader conspiracy. Despite numerous theories, the truth remains elusive. Was this a tragic accident, a calculated kidnapping, or something even more sinister? To this day, the Sauter children's fate is one of America's most haunting unsolved mysteries. If you have a theory or new information, share it in the comments below. Together, we might finally uncover the truth. For the residents of Dayton, Ohio, in 1992, the holiday season was stained with fear and bloodshed. Over the span of just 3 days, 4 young members of the self-styled Downtown Posse embarked on a chilling killing spree that left 6 people dead and 2 others gravely injured. This is the story of the Dayton Christmas murders. The main perpetrator, Marvelous Keene, was a 19-year-old high school dropout and self-proclaimed leader of the Downtown Posse, a loose-knit group of teenagers. Heather Matthews, 20, DeMarcus Smith, 17, and Laura Taylor, 16. They were young, troubled, and looking for fast money, but what started as petty theft quickly escalated into one of the most infamous murder sprees in Ohio's history. Their first victim was 34-year-old Joseph Wilkerson, a factory worker who lived alone. Lured by Laura Taylor under the pretense of a romantic encounter, Wilkerson invited her and Heather Matthews to his home. Unbeknownst to him, Keene and Smith were waiting outside, armed. Once inside, they overpowered Wilkerson, tied him to his bed, and executed him with a single gunshot to the head. The group then ransacked his home, stealing money, jewelry, and his car. This first killing was calculated but utterly cold-blooded. Wilkerson wasn't a threat to them. He wasn't even resisting. This set the tone for the spree that would follow, random, heartless, and terrifying. On Christmas Day, their violence escalated. 19-year-old Danita Gillette was their next target. She was using a payphone on a quiet street corner when the group approached her. Without warning, they shot her multiple times and stole her coat, shoes, and a few dollars from her purse. For Gillette's family, it was a devastating loss. She was described as a hardworking teenager, saving money for college. The sheer randomness of her murder shocked the community. People in Dayton began locking their doors and staying inside. The idea that you could be attacked for no reason at any time was paralyzing. Gillette, a high school senior and mother to a 2-year-old daughter, lost her life over trivial items. When the group returned to their hideout, Taylor wore Gillette's jacket and Smith carried her shoes. That night, the group targeted Jeffrey Wright, the ex-boyfriend of Heather Matthews. After an argument at their apartment, Smith shot Wright in the legs 4 times. Miraculously, Wright survived, crawling to a neighbor's house and later identifying the downtown posse to police. On Christmas Day, Keene returned to Wilkerson's house to steal his second car and more valuables. Later, Taylor lured her ex-boyfriend, 19-year-old Richmond Maddox, into his car. Suspicious of being followed by Keene, Matthews, and Smith, Maddox sped up. Taylor then shot Maddox in the head with a Derringer, escaping the vehicle just before it crashed on Benton Avenue. In the early hours of December 26, 1992, the group robbed a grocery store. Sarah Abraham, a 38-year-old mother working the cash register, was shot in the head by Keene after handing over $40. 2 other men in the store, Edward Thompson and Jones Pettis, were also shot. Pettis survived despite a wound to his abdomen, but Abraham succumbed to her injuries 4 days later. By now, paranoia gripped the group. Fearing that their friends Wendy Cottrell, 16, and Marvin Washington, 18, might expose them, the gang lured the pair to a gravel pit in Dayton. Despite their protests of loyalty, Keene shot Cottrell while Smith killed Washington. Their bodies were discovered 5 days later. Tragically, it was revealed that Cottrell was 3 months pregnant at the time of her murder. Police arrested all 4 members of the downtown posse on December 27, 1992. The evidence was overwhelming: stolen items, murder weapons, and confessions. Marvelous Keene was convicted of multiple counts of aggravated murder and sentenced to death, a sentence carried out in 2009. The others received lengthy prison sentences, with Taylor spared the death penalty due to her age. On the morning of December 26, 1996, the Ramsey family awoke to what should have been a joyous holiday. Instead, they found themselves thrust into a nightmare. John Bonet, only 6 years old and a celebrated beauty pageant contestant, was reported missing, and a ransom note was discovered on their staircase demanding an eerily specific sum of $118,000. The ransom note, written in block letters, was unusual for its length and verbosity, spanning nearly 3 pages. Forensic document analysis has been a battleground of debate. Initially, the handwriting was compared to Patsy Ramsey's, JonBenét's mother, showing similarities, but experts could never definitively conclude it was her work. Recent re-evaluation. In 2023, using advanced AI-assisted handwriting analysis has muddled the waters further, suggesting potential forgery or mimicry by someone familiar with the Ramsey household. Let's dive into the forensic evidence. From that day, JonBenét was found in the basement of her family's home by her father, John Ramsey. The scene was a macabre tableau. A garrote, fashioned from a paintbrush handle, and cord had been used, along with signs of blunt force trauma to her head. The autopsy confirmed strangulation associated with craniocerebral trauma as the cause of death. The Boulder Police Department's investigation focused heavily on the family. Here's what we've learned over the years. John and Patsy Ramsey both were subjected to intense scrutiny. Despite inconclusive polygraph results, they've maintained their innocence. In 2024, with new polygraph technology and psychological profiling, their credibility has been reassessed, with some experts arguing for their exoneration, while others remain skeptical. Burke Ramsey, JonBenét's older brother, now 37, was initially considered a suspect due to his age and some of his behaviors at the time. However, DNA evidence from 2008 and psychological assessments conducted in 2023 have effectively cleared him of any involvement. The intruder theory persists, supported by the presence of unknown male DNA on JonBenét's clothing, which was not matched to any known associates or family members. Recent advances in DNA phenotyping have allowed for a more detailed profile of this unknown individual, suggesting a Caucasian male, possibly from a Northern European descent. Over the decades, several suspects have come under the microscope. Gary Oliva, a convicted pedophile with a history of breaking into homes in Boulder, including the Ramsey neighborhood. His DNA didn't match. But a recent psychological profile in 2024 has reignited interest in his potential involvement. John Mark Carr confessed to the murder in 2006, but his DNA and alibi didn't align. However, behavioral analysis conducted in 2023 suggests his confession might have been an attempt at gaining infamy rather than an admission of guilt. The Ramsey case has also seen a resurgence in public interest due to true crime podcasts, documentaries, and online forums where amateur sleuths and professional investigators alike share theories and findings. Here are some of the most compelling theories that have gained traction in recent years. The intruder with knowledge. This theory posits that the killer was someone who knew the Ramsey family's patterns and had access to their home. New evidence suggests this intruder might have entered the house through an unlocked door or window, possibly during a holiday party or when the family was preoccupied. Staged crime scene. Some experts argue that the crime scene was staged to look like a kidnapping gone wrong or an external intruder's work. Recent analysis shows discrepancies in the way certain items were placed, suggesting someone with a knowledge of forensic procedures attempted to mislead investigators. The perfect storm theory. Combining various elements, this theory suggests that a confluence of events led to JonBenét's murder, possibly involving a family member, an intruder, or a combination of both, with the ransom note designed to throw off the investigation. As we stand in 2024, the Boulder Police Department has not closed the case. Advances in technology continue, to provide hope that this long-standing mystery might finally be solved. Here are some of the latest developments. Genetic genealogy, similar to how it has solved other cold cases. Genetic genealogy has been employed in the Ramsey case to trace relatives of unknown DNA profiles, potentially leading to new suspects or witnesses. Reevaluation of evidence. With improved forensic techniques, evidence from the case is being re-examined. Items like the garrote, the ransom note, and clothing fibers are under the microscope once again, with the help of AI and machine learning to detect patterns or anomalies not visible to the human eye. Community and public engagement. Boulder PD has initiated new outreach programs to communities and has reopened tip lines, encouraging anyone with information or who might have been overlooked in the initial investigation to come forward. The Ramsey family has not been silent. They've actively pursued justice for John Bonet, supporting new investigations and even funding research into unsolved murders. John Ramsey, now in his late 70s, has expressed both frustration and hope that with modern science, his daughter's killer might finally be brought to justice.
She knew she was loved. I mean, we told her that every day. But I would tell her, I'm sorry, I didn't protect you. That's a father's job.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Christmas Criminal Chronicles. Stay tuned for more insights into the world of crime and justice. Until next time, keep seeking the light in the darkness.